So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fenton. I'm the VP of Global Sales for XConnect. Joined here today by my esteemed colleague, Sri Ramachandran, who is the CTO of Somos, who happens to also be our parent company. Sri, hi. How are you?
I feel like a parent. Thank you. Doing good.
Excellent. We're here to talk about AIT. We've seen some huge names like Google, X, Microsoft steer a little bit away from SMS. So to kick things off, can you briefly explain what artificially inflated traffic is and why it poses such a significant risk for enterprises communicating via SMS?
Great. So AIT, or artificially inflated traffic, is one of those new acronyms that has AI, but it's not the AI that we talk about, not the chat GPT. So that's a big distinction. So it's artificially inflated traffic. So what really happens here is, so we had some great presentations this morning that talked about authentication messages, SMS messages that carry authentication. So essentially a one-time password so that users can get authenticated or logged into a mobile app or a website and so on, right? And most of the artificially inflated traffic originates is actually this OTP traffic that is really expanding in scope. So the reason for that is you have bots that create bogus accounts within enterprise portals, let's say. And these bots attempt a login, and every time it attempts a login, it generates an SMS message, an OTP message. The OTP message goes somewhere, and the interesting thing is there's obviously a lot of collusion in the industry that enables this to happen. And the other vector, so to speak, is that there are certain termination regions that have very high termination rates. So it's a great way to say, okay, let's use those numbers, those high termination regions, and let's send OTP messages that essentially go nowhere because there's no successful login after that, but it generates a money flow throughout. And so this artificially inflated traffic is crazy because artificially inflated voice call.
Right now.
Yeah. I'm really sorry for that. So what really happens here is that the money flow goes back to the enterprise. So in fact, a few years ago, when Elon Musk was taking over Twitter, one of the things he said was he hated these bot accounts, and that was one of his first things to clean up was those bot accounts, because the bot accounts were generating these OTP messages trying to log into Twitter, and he actually tweeted saying he's spending several $1 million a month on these charges, which are not going anywhere, right? So it's hard to figure out whether it's legit or not, but then he is spending a lot of money. And then there's been a big change to actually move to a different kind of authentication basically into Twitter and so on. So this artificial inflation of traffic is really a big problem, and the enterprises are the ones who are actually facing all the issues because they're actually spending money on those terminations, and it's not really helping them.
Okay, so if the enterprises can not solely rely on the network to protect them, what tools are there within the CPaaS platforms to help them identify and block those fraudulent numbers?
So one of the simple tools they can use, which is the CPaaS players and the aggregators, because they're being party to this even though they're not truly at fault, but they can actually have some tools around number validation, because it's really about the terminating number where the actual OTP message is going, and they're usually essentially a bogus number. So what we've seen is that up to 20% of those numbers are actually completely invalid. So they're not assigned or completely invalid number, but it's still being sent to that number. So those are all easy ones to actually catch and kill, so to speak, right? So that way we can reduce the overall traffic in that.
Okay, that's fantastic. And what else are we seeing in that market that can address that challenge?
So from a market perspective, I think what's happening is there's action being taken at many different levels, right? So the enterprises, obviously, It's a huge cost issue for them. And they're trying to see, okay, what else can I do? Can I switch to an authenticator app so I don't need to use an OTP message?
Yeah.
They're trying to use in-app notifications. That could be another way to do it. Or there are other methods like passkeys and so on, which actually are, again, pretty advanced, which create user friction, because if a user does not understand what a passkey is and what it's actually doing, they're not going to adopt it. So there are many techniques out there, but then it's really hard for them to, for the adoption to take place. So enterprises are really straddled with a multi-channel or a multi-pronged strategy, because they got to go beyond just the OTP part.
So where does that leave SMS? Does that mean SMS will remain? The OTP will remain with SMS?
So it was interesting. So I think it was last year, Nick Lane from Mobile Squared, he actually showed a slide where because of OTP, and he thought there was going to be significant substitution of those OTP messages with other forms of authentication. He actually drew it all the way down to like a very low number. But I'm not sure that that's quite the case, because it's going to take some time for that change to happen. And he had a very aggressive estimate for how quickly that particular substitution was going to happen. But I'm not so sure it's that fast, because
Right.
we are still, I think the OTP message is kind of here to stay. I don't think it's going to go away. It might change with other techniques. There's going to be a mixture of new techniques as well as OTP, but it's going to remain.
And is there any way to control the AIT traffic? Is there anything that the enterprises can do or the network providers can do to stop the traffic originating at all, or is there nothing? Is that out of their control?
Many different techniques are there. And one of the challenges that enterprises have, especially if they have, it's a little bit technical, but it's really important. So if you have, let's say, a bank has a web portal as well as a banking app. So if they use the web portal, it is going to generate an OTP message. But if they use just the mobile app, there are different ways to actually verify that the user is the same one that's actually using that particular mobile app, right? So it creates kind of a fragmentation for them, so that they actually have to use multiple techniques to make that all happen.
Okay. And for an enterprise, what sort of best practices or strategies would you suggest that they implement now? What the sort of short and medium term strategies should be for them in order to help them mitigate this problem, this cost?
So from an enterprise, I think there's definitely a lot more partnership with the CPaaS and the aggregators to make sure they have the tools in place, and the fact that their CPaaS providers are actually leveraging these number verification tools. It's really important. So number verification is, it may seem kind of basic, but it's really hard, because if you go back to using this Twitter as an example, right? So you can have Twitter users all over the world. So which means you need to be able to gather the entire world's numbering information to know which one is valid, which one is invalid, and so on. And so creating that aggregation is really key here, right? So you need to have a way to do that. Then the second thing is, it's not that numbers are remain with, numbers get ported, which means may be originally assigned to a particular operator, but it does move to others as subscribers change their carriers. So it needs to be corrected with that. And the other weird part of this is that there are all these international premium rate numbers, which are actually insidiously used for these OTP messages. So which means you need to be able to have a very comprehensive check of a global number range, number intelligence around all of those global numbers, so that we can, so that the enterprise working with the CPaaS and the aggregators can actually put together a much more comprehensive way to try to combat this fraud.
Do you have any idea of how much of that fraud that could help combat? Is there any evidence that it's 20%, 50%?
So this morning we learned that 35% of all the business messaging traffic is actually related to authentication, which is OTP. And the AIT is actually growing much faster than the SMS traffic by itself, right? So which means if we were to combat this, we can probably bring down the AIT volumes pretty significantly, and definitely address that 20% of numbers that are actually fraudulent right away. Right?
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
So, if I'm an enterprise and I'm doing well combating AIT, what metrics am I using? How do I know that I'm reducing AIT? Is it just my bill's gone down, or are there other aspects where I can look to see that actually
Yeah.
I'm restricting?
So that's definitely a CFO pitch right there, right? Telling your CFO the bill is
love
going
my
to go
CFO.
down. Yeah, yeah. But I think so from a technical angle, right? The idea is that all these bots that actually create these dummy accounts and those OTP messages essentially go nowhere. So all those result in unsuccessful login attempts. And so that's a clear metric of how they're actually monitoring the AIT traffic and knowing that's actually going down. So making sure that the unsuccessful login attempts are actually going down because of the use of these tools would be a fantastic metric to track and monitor and make sure that it's also reducing the overall AIT traffic and the bills, of course.
And
right?
the bills,
Yeah.
and of course that has the knock-on effect of reduced resource on wasted login attempts, right? So
Right,
it
yeah.
has an
Mhm.
extra
Yeah.
an extra boost there. And is there anything else that enterprise should be looking at to implement immediately? Is this something that enterprise does? Is it something that CPaaS does?
So
Who's taking that step? Who's responsible?
yeah, so I think there is a lot of action on the enterprises to enable this, right? So right now, if you look at it, it's not just sending out an SMS. There are other techniques that we talked about, using an authenticator app, and so on. But I think from this morning's presentation around mobile APIs, we learned that there are authentication techniques that are available using APIs. So that is a very interesting development, especially when you talk of uh, MNOs, mobile network operators, uh, having the authoritative information around subscribers, and then using the fact that they know that your device is on and the device is on you, helping create that association really helps the authentication part. So in fact, one of the biggest use cases around mobile APIs today is around user authentication, right? And I think that is another tool in their arsenal that they can use. And that is going to be really important. And in fact, that is why, as we announced this morning, so Somos and XConnect acquired Secura so that we can actually complete the portfolio to say we can offer a comprehensive solution, not only around number intelligence, around the global number range and so on, but also allow for mobile subscriber authentication using API methodologies.
You just did the sales pitch beautifully there, Sri. Thank you. Very, very, very kind of you. And sort of as we go to the future, are we currently winning the AIT war? Do you think we're going to win it next year? Is it 5 years? What's your view of the horizon?
So I think what's happening now is that, so initially there was shock. I think the last couple of years has been a lot of shock around the fact that it's increasing so rapidly. And kind of in tandem with that have been all the termination rates are also increasing a lot. So I think now there is definitely an understanding of the tools that are necessary to combat AIT, and I think it's slowly kind of coming together. And we hope in the future these tools will get used much more, they're used much more prevalently, so we can actually get a handle on this AIT and actually reduce it.
Okay, that's fantastic. From my perspective, Sri, that's all the questions I have. I don't know if anyone here has got any questions at all.
And I don't know if this is the right question, but just curious, like you mentioned the originator of this AIT traffic and the ecosystem maybe around that, chat like Autobot. Who? I guess the question for me is that who and where are they coming from? I mean,
So who are the bad
yeah,
people?
who are the bad actors?
Who are the bad people, Sri?
So you can go to ChatGPT and say, write me a bot that tries to log in into some favorite website of yours. It actually generates the code, and you can actually start doing that. And obviously, it requires
Sorry, if I did that, how do I
participation.
make some money?
Right. It requires participation within the ecosystem. That is the unfortunate part, right? So there are bad actors within our ecosystem who are leveraging this. So they could be tied to the termination region. So knowing that the termination rates are high and it's exclusive, right? That's the reason that's the reason why they can make money on it. So those are the bad actors down the chain.
Brilliant.
Potential sources of bad actors. Download it, read it, tell us what you think about it.
Hey guys, Eric Perlstein from Twilio. So in the AIT world, you have the operators themselves who are benefiting from increases in traffic because they're getting paid. You have got the connection to the operators that's getting paid. You've got the business connection that gets paid through AIT. Sometimes there's an application service provider also benefiting from AIT. You've got 4 beneficiaries. The only loser is the enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you fight that within the system?
So that's why giving the tools to the enterprise is, I mean, if they continue to lose money on this, and they realize that it's AIT through these unsuccessful login attempts, etc., they're going to go away. They're going to switch to authenticator, which means everybody in the chain loses after that. So it kind of behooves all of us to work together to make sure that we keep the fraud out and make sure that there's legit traffic flowing.
They're often the last to know.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Which is why we need to enable them with the tools, right? Any other questions, Susan? Brilliant. Sri, thank you very much.
Thank you.